Chris here, back with AllDoCube's Knote 8. So this is a 13.3 inch 2560 by 1440 resolution screen tablet. It's fully laminated, so it does have a very nice screen on this. This is by far the best feature we have on this. So it has a maximum brightness of 410 lux, deep blacks, good reasonable color reproduction, touch accuracy in response is good, but there is a bit of a flaw with the touch response. What happens with the digitizer on this, it will go into a sleep mode after non-use for a while. So if you're not touching the screen all the time, for example, scrolling up and down on a web page, and you leave it for a while and go back to close down one of the windows, you'll find you have to tap again after a few seconds because it goes into sleep mode and takes around 2 to 3 seconds to wake up again. Now, I've seen this on other tablets. It means that at times it can be a little bit annoying because you're going to have to re-tap again because it falls to sleep the screen. That is really the only con here, and by far the best feature of this tablet is that really nice screen. So it's super bright at 410 lux, but it also dims down really dim, and this is great for nighttime use. A lot of manufacturers tend to set the minimum brightness levels far too high for nighttime use. They just don't actually think about that, I feel. So the build and design of it, it's a typical 2-in-1 here, and we've got a detachable optional keyboard you can get. Now, this keyboard is really nice to type on. It has a rubberized finish to it, so it's a bit of a texture to it. I don't know how it's going to hold up long term. I have noticed that the rubber underneath it, however, due to a little bit of damage on one of the corners, is black. So if you do end up scratching it, it's going to probably end up looking a little bit messy over time. Now, the touchpad, while large and while it does support gestures, is not running Windows precision drivers. Now, this is a bit annoying. I found that the more finer movements using this, for example, you need to close down a box or minimize or maximize a window, can be quite frustrating. And in the end, I ended up using a mouse or just simply using the touch screen. So not a great touchpad on this keyboard. Now, the keyboard is backlit, which is great to have. And you'll see that it's got this purple color, which is rather nice, not too bad. Now, it's just an on and off setting. There is no levels of brightness. Now, it clips in with magnets, pogo pin port on there, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult to align there to get it to clip right in. You can see I'm struggling to just clip it. There we go. Okay, it took about 3 or 4 tries there. One thing about it is we cannot prop it up to a second level to get that angle on there for increased typing comfort. That's one thing that this keyboard is missing. Now, the design with the kickstand, you can see we've got a free angle kickstand. You can prop it up about that. It's the maximum upright angle. And then this is as far as it will go back, which to me, considering that this actually supports an active stylus to this particular tablet, I don't happen to have it. I can't find it yet to buy it, the correct stylus. I don't even think it's out yet. It should recline more than this, so it should go way back. If we can get it right back like you can, for example, the Microsoft Surface, then that would be a lot better for stylus use for those that are going to buy the stylus for it. So the chassis of it, the build, is actually a plastic frame, metal on the rear, 5 megapixel camera you can see on the back there. Now, I won't bother giving you any samples of this because it's very average. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to really probably use it. It is autofocus, however, which is good. So you can take a photo of whiteboards, text, things like that up close. And you'll notice too that the hinge mechanism as well, that's all metal too there, so that's good. Now, when you have a look at the ports we've got here, on the left-hand side, you'll notice that, hey, where's the full-size USB 3 port? No, it's missing. This is a massive error, and really I feel that if it's a Windows 10 tablet especially, it should have a full-sized USB 3 port on there, so you can at least connect up an external hard drive on here. So that's a shame it does not have it. And that will definitely be a deal breaker for some people. I know it is almost for me. So you have to carry around the adapter, of course, they give you in the box, and probably get yourself a Type-C hub. So that Type-C port will support 4K up to 30 Hertz maximum that I've been able to get with it. And the other thing too is that it will support charging as well as that DC charging you have there. Now, the 3.5mm headphone jack on there, that supports microphones as well. The audio quality out of that is good. It's loud. And there's no static over it, which is good too. I hate having static out of those 3.5mm jacks, which is often quite common. Now, the micro SD card slot, you've seen my unboxing. If you have, you would have seen I've got a bit of a problem with it, that it's not well designed. It just doesn't align properly with the case, so you can accidentally slot in a micro SD card behind the actual reader and perhaps even lose it or get one jammed in there. So not good at all. But overall, the build, yes, it's good. It's got a good build quality, but there's just the little tiny little quirks there that I don't particularly like about it. I feel that, of course, that the kickstand should go back a little bit further. They should have a full-size USB 3 port, and the micro SD card reader should be done a little bit different. Now, that micro SD card reader, just to point out as well, will support USB 3 speeds, the reader, so you're not limited at USB 2 speeds, which often happens. So this Knote 8 is running Windows 10 Home. It's not the latest version you'll see here, the OS build they've got, so you will need to run some updates when you first get it. And it's running 8 GB of RAM, which is in dual channel, and it's running at 1866 megahertz, which is good. Now you will see that it does mention here that it supports a pen and touch support. You've even got this right down here, which is Windows Ink Workspace. Now I do have right here, this stylus is Chewy's HI13 stylus. It's the High Pen 3, I think it is, which actually tends to almost work. But you'll see there what's happening is it's jumping around all over the place. So what this means to me, that it will support a similar stylus, but on a different frequency. So you have to wait and see what happens if AllDoCube are going to release the stylus soon. Hopefully they will. It's obviously coming. It's in the works. Now I've run a couple of benchmarks here. I wanted to point out too that the internet speeds, so I was able to get, this is about the best I can get here in the studio. However, connected up to my router at home with a much faster wireless AC router than the one I've got here with my fiber line, I'm able to push almost 380 megabits per second, which is close really to the maximum that that chipset is able to do. And under the device manager, so there it is, the Intel Wireless AC3165. It's not the fastest, definitely not there. So we have a disk drive here, which is just labeled as a SATA SSD. Now, when I've seen this in the past, that means it's either a BWin or 4C brand. These are the speeds here. So the read speeds for SATA 3, those are all good. 4Ks, the reads and the writes, also good. Sequential writes, you can see a little bit on the low side because this will be an M.2 22x42 spec one. So that's a slightly smaller drive, and that does tend to put on some restrictions there when it comes to the kind of speed you're able to get out of this. Now the tests that I've run here, so we've got Geekbench for the synthetic benchmark. Not too bad for this chipset, for the Core M3 7Y30. That has a maximum turbo of 2.6 gigahertz. It's not the fastest, nor is it the lowest score I've seen from that chipset either. And the OpenCL benchmark, so this is testing out the graphics right there. I also ran Antutu, so it's not the latest version they have on Windows Play Store. This is the version 6 you can see, and a score of 213,000 there. So if you've never used a Core M3, at least the 7Y30, it's quite a good chipset. I mean, this supports native H.2.64 decoding, VP9 decoding, movie files. And here I'm streaming in Chrome 4K, and you can see that it's only dropped one frame here. Of course, with my fast connection here, it all depends on your connection, but it can stream this back no problem. So really, it's over twice the power of, say, the Apollo Lake N3450. That's Intel's Celeron, one of the weaker chips, and one of the ones that I often review here in the channel because of the 8 GB of RAM as well. You can do quite a bit of multitasking, and it's very smooth and using the touch. Now, I will demonstrate here the touch screen that I mentioned. That look, when I first touch it, okay, it didn't happen right then. But sometimes you need to wake it first. It doesn't respond to the first touch, but now it's quite good. So that's smooth, that's scrolling, the speed, and it will keep up with everything. So switching between your tabs and everything. It really does perform quite well. Very similar to, say, an older generation Core i3 or i5, depending on which generation, like a 4th generation Core i5 even. Not bad at all in terms of performance with that. Now, you can edit 1080p video just fine and encode it depending on the editor you use. Use something that supports Intel QuickSync. For example, we've got Power Director. That's one that does support Intel QuickSync. But 4K video editing, I wouldn't recommend that at all. Don't touch that. It's just far too slow. Now, battery life is one area that I have found to be very disappointing with this tablet. I have done quite a few full battery cycles here, and I wanted to just point that out, that you can see here, look, that this is probably the best I got actually Most of the time it was under 4 hours. So I set the brightness down to 25%, which I find is good for indoors. So it's not even on the, what I would call the brightest setting. And this is the result here. So you can see after almost, 3 hours and 40 minutes of use, that I'm down to 20% battery from 100%. And that was really only with about 6 to 8 tabs open in Chrome. Now, charging times are also quite slow. It took over 4 hours to fully charge the 41 milliamp hour battery. So overall, disappointing results here. This is probably one of the worst battery lives I have seen on a Core M3 tablet. Normally I see around 5 to 5.5 hours, which still isn't great compared to, say, the Apollo Lakes. So the tablet's got left and right firing speakers. They are of reasonable quality. They do have a tiny little bit of bass and some okay mids and things. They're just not really loud enough. I'll give you a sample of them now. Now checking out gaming performance. This is League of Legends. I'm running it in 1440p on the medium high setting, and it's hovering around 45, close to 50 frames per second, which I feel isn't bad. So it's a big step up in performance from the quad-core Apollo Lake Celeron chips that I typically review. And Counter-Strike on the lowest settings, 1080p, is reasonably playable here. You see we're getting over 40 frames per second, which is great. So good for a little quick game on the side. Nothing serious, of course. What about a more demanding title? So I did test out Fortnite. Unfortunately, what happened is I lost my footage from that, but it runs in 720p on the lowest settings, around 24, 25 frames per second, and it is playable, but only just. And at the moment, I see I've got a huge waiting time in line. This game is just proving to be way too popular for the servers. Okay, so take a look at these temperatures here. It's just scorching hot, and this is on the screen here. So long term, this is not good to have these kind of temps. It's going to eventually cause some sort of damage somewhere. And after that little bit of gaming, you saw, 95 degrees. And for some reason, that hasn't triggered thermal throttling, which is really strange because the T-Junction Max is 105 degrees, or possibly even maybe 100 they might have the thermal throttling set to. It's still far too hot, and this does need, I feel, a copper heatsink mod if you are going to be gaming and doing really demanding things on this tablet.
No, you probably gathered if you've watched most of this video here that there's just too many cons, really. I mean, the screen is nice. I'll start off with the positives. It won't be negative, that it is very bright, it dims down really dim. And I do like the fully laminated screens, of course. It just makes it look a lot better than most other tablets that aren't fully laminated. So that's the big positive there. It's a good screen. The build quality is good, it's okay. But my unit, I have issues with. Micro SD card slot's misaligned. It doesn't line up properly. I feel that this kickstand really needs to go back a lot further than this. That's not good enough. And one of the big cons is, where's a full-size USB 3 port on there? There should be one on this side or the other side, at least one. We need it. We always need that. We can't just have Type-C. I don't like the move just to put Type-C ports on. And if people want to defend Cube and say, oh, that's why they made it slim, because they couldn't put USB 3 ports on there. I've seen slim devices slimmer than this that have full-size USB 3 ports, so they can do it. I know they can. The keyboard as well, it's really nice to type on. So that's good. If you're going to do a lot of typing, you'll be happy with the keyboard. It just feels good. I like it. I can type really fast with hardly no typos, literally. But the touchpad, that touchpad is frustrating to use. So if you happen to leave your mouse at home, or you forgot the little dongle adapter so you can't plug it into it, and it's not a Bluetooth one, yes, maybe you can get away with using it a little bit, but it's just when you need to do accurate movements. So I found that when it was really bad, for example, you're in something like Paint, you want to crop an image, or you want to highlight some text and things, it's just really annoying. The cursor tends to jump around, and I just gave up. There's no way I'm using this touchpad. It's just, no, not good at all. So, as a package, I can say no, don't get it. You're probably better off getting the Cube Mix. Now, you're going to have to do my thermal copper heatsink mod to that model, and this model really does need it as well, which gets to my biggest con. gets far too hot, doesn't it? I mean, it gets hot in this area. That's where you'll find the Core M3s right here. The heat's been transferred to the rear with Cube's new and improved cooling technique that they commented on in the advertising material for this model, but it just cooks itself. It gets up to 92, 93 degrees. So if you intend to video edit or game and be charging at the same time, it's not good. I feel long term that's going to probably end up damaging the screen. You could have the glue separate from here or the frame come away from it or something like that, which I think happened to the Cube Thinker i35 as well. Luckily that hasn't happened to my Cube Thinker, and mine hasn't had that problem. So that's not great. And then the battery life, hugely disappointing. I struggle to make 4 hours on this tablet. I mean, the Core M3s have always had pretty much bad battery life in my experience, with the tablets at least, even the Microsoft Surface Pro. Not amazing, but this is one of the lowest scores I have seen from a Core M3. Normally you get 5 hours, but this one bad. And then about 4 hours to charge it as well. There's just all these things start stacking up that no, I cannot recommend this one here. So I do hope to see you back in the channel. I hope you liked the video. Please thumbs up and subscribe if you did. And I hope to catch you back with a better device here than the AllDoCube Knote 8.